and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sophie and this channel is chronicling my journey of living my best life with multiple chronic health conditions. Today is the last day of Mental Health Awareness Month, so I thought I would make a video talking about the tools I've used to help me cope with my mental health diagnoses. I will start with talking about PTSD simply because I think that's sort of at the root of all of my other issues. So as I've said in previous videos, I had a lot of trauma growing up and I've been to many different therapists. It wasn't until I think I was a freshman in undergrad when I did specific trauma work. I had been inpatient for anorexia, which I'll get to in a minute, and they suggested this location in West Virginia who did trauma work. I forget what they used to be called, but they had changed their name to intensive trauma therapy, and they have a whole system that they use. Unfortunately, they no longer do direct clinical work, but they are teaching their methods to other clinicians, which is really awesome. A lot of it was like artwork. I remember making like little clay figurines and smashing them with hammers. I remember like drawing out the trauma like in various stages. They have their system is on like the instinctual trauma response. So they have like the freeze response or the startle, the freeze, the fight, the altered sense of consciousness. There's a whole system that they have, and you sort of draw images for each one and then narrate it. So you sort of put words to the images that you're seeing like during a flashback. I don't remember a lot about doing the program. It was intensive, as the name suggests. So it was around 6 or 8 hours a day, 6 or 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I did a total of 2 weeks, although not back to back. So it was probably close to 80 hours of pure trauma work, and that was really helpful to get me over what I would consider the normal triggers, or at least I don't react to triggers that I used to. And I no longer have an obvious trigger reaction. I no longer like avoid certain areas of the house per se. I no longer like hyperventilate or have a panic attack or anything like that. My triggers now are more subtle and they're more hidden for sure. A lot of it will just be like the thoughts that I'll have, like something will happen and it will trigger me to have certain thoughts, or things of that nature, and things that you would think would trigger me don't trigger me. Like I used to have a lot of nightmares, and I don't really get nightmares anymore, even if I'm reading or like watch something on YouTube and I'm watching a show and it has something that would make sense that I'd be triggered by. It normally doesn't trigger me, so it's a little more like sinister now. It is a lot more subtle, which is a blessing and a curse, because sometimes I don't realize what will trigger me until I realize I am starting to get into old thought loops or wanting to engage in self-destructive behaviors, which I will get to in a couple minutes. Next, I'll talk about depression. So I've had depression for as long as I can remember. I went on my first antidepressant when I was 14, so over 20 years now. I have been on many antidepressants. I, at one point, had a list, but it was just from memory, so I don't know how accurate it was. But I've been on all of the name, like the big names, like Paxil, Prozac, Celexa, Wellbutrin. Been on all of them. I haven't been on any of the MIOIs or the tricyclics, I don't believe. But all of the newer like SSRIs, SNRIs, I've been on most of them at this point. I've also been on adjuncts, so I've been on an atypical antipsychotic. I was on Seroquel for a while. I don't really know if it was helping that much. I don't really think it was. It might have been helping me sleep better, but that was really it. And I've had other medications I've tried for sleep as well, and they work for a little bit, but nothing really kept working. In that regard, I've been on trazodone, Remeron, and again, didn't really help in the long run. Then, as I think I've mentioned, I was on lithium for wanting to unalive myself, and oddly enough, that definitely helped. I'm not sure I would still be here if I hadn't been taking it during the time frame I was taking it, which was 2018, I want to say, through 2021. So definitely helpful. And I'm currently on Vibrid, which is, I think it's an SSRI, I don't really know. I had done a genetic test to see what antidepressants would work best for me, and before I was on Celexa, but I was on a really, really high dose of Celexa that's no longer allowed, and the genetic test showed that I basically metabolize it rapidly, and that's why I needed the high dose. And we tried Vibrid. It was one of the things I had not tried yet, and it worked, and I've been on that since January or February of 2020, right before all of my medical health issues started. I had just gotten into going to the gym again, and I was going pretty regularly before March 2020 happened and everything else that came with it. Then the anorexia was during high school at the worst of it. I was hospitalized in summer 2005, right before I went into undergrad for my freshman year. And I'll make separate videos for all of these things, talking in more detail about what I experienced and how I sort of got out of it in more detail, but just for now, just sort of an overview for Mental Health Awareness Month. I've said that I had 3 steps to recover from the anorexia, and the first one was stopping the behavior and making sure I was at a healthy weight. And that was when I was an inpatient. I was there for 5 weeks. I'll make another video talking about the anorexia specifically, like I said. The second step is to have a way to hold yourself accountable so you do not automatically relapse into behaviors. And for me, when I went to undergrad, I had to sign a contract basically saying if I lost weight, they would kick me out. And since that was the whole reason I went inpatient to begin with, was because I knew to succeed in college, I needed to be able to think straight and everything. I did not want to get kicked out. And then the third thing, which may be more important than the second's important, especially if you don't have the third, but the third took precedence very quickly, and that was to find a reason to recover. Find something that recovery is for. Something that if you relapse, you lose. So for me, that was not only college, but I found weightlifting, and I fell in love with lifting weights. And I knew if I didn't eat, I couldn't really do well in the gym. And so that was my third step, was just finding something that was incompatible with the eating disorder. And that's sort of how I've maintained recovery. I do consider myself recovered. I know there's a lot of thoughts as to whether or not one can really recover from an eating disorder, but that's just my thought. I do think it's possible. I realize not everyone does. I don't really have the negative thoughts. I don't have the body image distortions like I did. I'll get into all of that in a separate video, but that is how I overcame the anorexia. And then I left self-injury to last because I'm not going to say I'm over it. And I used to say I was, because I had gone probably 10 years without self-injuring, but then 2020 happened and the self-injury came back. So I will hesitate very strongly to say I am over the self-injury. And I still definitely have times where I want to self-injure. I just haven't in about maybe a year or so. I don't know. So one of the reasons I get tattoos is because if I tattoo an area, I am not going to self-injure there because that defeats the purpose of getting the tattoo. So that's one way I have sort of stopped myself. It's like, oh no, like, don't do that because you're going to get a tattoo soon. And that's been helpful, especially back when I was really struggling with doctor appointments and not being believed and all of that. That was when I was self-injuring a lot. So just knowing I had like a tattoo coming up was enough to make me not do it a lot of times. Now it's more, it doesn't happen as often now because I have a totally different view when I go into doctors, which probably isn't the greatest either. But I just go in with the attitude that I'm not going to be believed, and so then if I'm not believed, I'm not like shocked. Like that's sort of what I go in expecting, and then I'm not basically triggered. My PTSD doesn't kick in, the self-negative thought spiral doesn't happen. I don't think I deserve to be punished, which is where a lot of the self-injury behavior comes from, the thought that I deserve to be punished. So that's definitely still a work in progress. I don't remember the last time I had a thought about self-injury. I know it was recently. I don't know if it was the last week, definitely within the last month. I did not act on it. I was able to like rationalize myself, also because I want to get a tattoo. But yeah, those are my 4 mental health conditions that I've been diagnosed with, and that's sort of how I have dealt with them up till now. And as I said, I will make a video about all of them individually in the future. I've recorded them, but they were recorded without me having like a little cheat sheet to look at. So I will probably make notes and then re-record them so I don't leave anything out. But I think that is going to be it for this video. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye guys.